listening to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network, the nonprofit organization that strives to address the staggering disparity in resource availability for individuals suffering from mental health disorders, processing disorders, addictions, trauma healing, and sexual identity challenges. Together, we strive to end the stigma associated with these challenges so that true healing can begin. Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network. I am excited to be your host. My name is Ange, and I officially welcome you to episode number 71. Today's guest is author Dr. Gigi Langer. Gigi has earned a Ph.D. in psychological studies and education and a master's in psychology from Stanford. She has co-authored many books for educators and written hundreds of articles on professional growth, leading to a successful career. However, she has also faced several personal challenges, such as failed relationships, codependency, and addiction, which she has bravely overcome. Her two books, Worry Less Now and Love More Now, offer guidance on freeing oneself from worry and fear, and how to connect with the wisdom of our true selves during difficult times. Okay, enough of this. Let's do it. But first, a reminder about our 3 C's of engagement. The first C, it is to click that subscribe, love or like, depending on your platform, share, follow, do all of the clicks right now. Trust me, you will regret it if you don't do them, and you absolutely will not regret if you share this with someone and you give them new hope today. So pause for a second, do your clicks. Okay, the second part, commit. Commit to staying to the full episode. Gigi shares so much wisdom throughout it, and at the end, she also talks about how you can get one of her books for free if you buy the other one. So check it out, stay for the end so you don't miss out on that opportunity. And then, what is our third C? Well, of course, it is our coffee. So fill up your coffee, sit back, relax, and let's get started. The reason we are all 100% volunteer, including the actors and actresses who read our blog posts, they do not get paid for doing that. So every Wednesday when we release a blog post, those actors and actresses who read them, they're not getting paid. They're volunteering their time. Wow. And that allows us that every dime that we raise, we keep our expenses so minimal that we're saving it to be able to assist individuals who are in treatment or need to be in treatment or need aftercare programs, and spend that money towards giving hope to those individuals and to their families and their communities and making an impact on that side. So it's kind of the two sides of education, reduce the stigma, drive people towards wellness, and then also raise those funds so that, the community can help individuals from all walks of life reach the highest level of wellness they can.
Fabulous. And it's not just addiction that you're talking about, which is so refreshing because, people are starting to now post, I'm bipolar or I'm this, and I found help here and I'm getting help this way. And, people aren't hiding so much anymore.
Which makes me so happy. Gigi, I personally talk about struggles that I have. I have severe PTSD. I had a kidnapping in 2020.
Yeah.
And I talk about going to my therapist. I talk about my psychiatrist. I talk about different sessions and things that I've learned over the years. Why? Really? Because I even talk openly at work about growing up with severe childhood abuse. Why do I do that? Not because I want sympathy from anyone. I want other individuals to consider it to be fine to talk about who they are as a human being. I mean, that's what makes us all amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I had to get my family's permission when I told the story about my father, how he hugged me and how I talked to him about it and my memories and, how I worked through all that inappropriate touching that happened. Because especially 5 years ago in 2018, when I first published this, not everybody was talking about that. It was becoming
No.
more, thank God it's just become more able and I think women then will report it, because they won't feel like they have to hide or like no one's going to believe them.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
cool.
Listeners, so why don't we jump into this, Gigi? Listeners, I
Good.
have Dr. Gigi, and I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. Is it Langer or have I completely butchered it?
Perfect, the way you said it.
Love it. And she is the author of 50 Ways to Worry Less Now. And as you can tell, it's a requirement of this podcast that I read every book. And so I have a little bit of an interesting story about how I read Gigi's book. But Gigi, I will tell you some of the cool little buzz teasers I'm going to throw out. They're my favorite themes throughout your book, was the idea of whispered lives, the worry quotient, the power greater than worry. That was pretty amazing. The idea of growth partners, appreciating beauty, gratitude, and of course, Yoda is one of my favorites. So the fact that you included a Yoda quote in it was like, yes, I love this. So why don't we kick this off? Go ahead and introduce yourself to listeners and tell them why you're here with us today.
Okay. Well, I'm Gigi Langer, and I am really glad to be here. I am an advocate for mental wellness and physical wellness. In my particular case, I did have, I would say, some PTSD from growing up in an alcoholic family and the inappropriate touching and so on. And then, as so many of us do who grew up in families like that, then we end up abusing drugs, alcohol, sex addiction, romance addiction, so I was doing the alcohol and drugs and basically got through grad school. That's why the doctor, because I got high every night just to handle the stress, but I made it through. But by the end there, I was feeling this is kind of a seedy life I have here, getting high every night. I found the perfect clean-cut guy to be my third husband because I'd been crashing and burning in relationships. And we moved to Michigan from California. And oh, wow, within 9 months of marrying him, I'm going out to bars and picking up strangers and telling stories to him. And, I went running to a psychologist and said, what the hell is wrong? I have a brand new Ph.D. from Stanford and my private life is really awful. I feel horrible. And he said, you're in the early stages of alcoholism. Try having 2 drinks, no more, no less. And I did that for 6 months. And lo and behold, when I had 1 drink, sometimes I'd only have a second one. And other times I'd have a third and a fourth and a fifth and find the man and the marijuana. And I concluded that if I had 1 drink, I could not trust myself to do anything healthy for me or anybody else. So that's when he said, well, why don't you try a 12-step program? Thank God I stayed in, therapy at that time. And I had a therapist who really, this was 1986. So I had a therapist who really understood, the disease of alcoholism and so on. So I've been sober ever since January of 1986. And I'm so, so grateful.
So I'm not going to quickly try and do the math really fast but I do know you probably know how many years that is just off the top of your head. So how many years is that?
38.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. For everyone who's like, but and you're an engineer. Yeah, I'm also an engineer who uses calculators. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So that's kind of my story about why I became so interested in personal growth and becoming healthy and helping others become healthy. And I worked in teacher education, preparing future teachers. And I retired in 2007. And that's when the idea of this book came. And my husband said, I thought I'd write a memoir because I had these marriages. I'd had living together relationships. I've lived in Hawaii and Brazil and all, and I was never happy, and I was going to write a memoir about my Hemingway-esque life. But my husband said, I hear you talking to your sponsees on the phone. My 4th husband, to whom I've been married 33 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Peter. And he said, why don't you write a book putting in there some of the stuff I hear you telling your sponsees on the phone, the people you talk to and help. So I thought, oh, there's an interesting idea. And that's how the book started. Yeah.
So I love this. So Gigi and I connected last year in 2023. I started reading this book in December, and then I don't recall why we put your interview on hold, but we did. And so one of the things is that I really want to respect the author, hence why I insist I read every single book. I make the notes and all of that. And so I had read through the beginning of chapter 3. So I had I'd finished right at where you have your score and you're creating your score and all of that, right? And then I stopped because I thought, okay, I'm going to wait and read the rest of it closer to when I'm going to interview her for obvious reasons, right? I mean, I have a good memory, but I mean, even I'm approaching 50, and so I have limits, okay? Yeah. And you know what I find was interesting? So in December, when I first started reading it, I was at a job that I absolutely hated. I was not convinced. Being a female in the C-suite, it is hard to get another C-suite job. I mean, a lot of the reason that individuals who work at companies who have a C-suite role have severance packages and pretty decent severance packages is partially that. It is not easy to just go and get another C-level job, right? And especially, I thought, me with a service dog and a disability, how am I going to get another job? And I'm miserable in my current job. And so my number was 8 then. Okay. And now I'm in an amazing job that I love. I was totally wrong. I had 3 job offers very quickly. And guess what, listeners? Not a single one of them cared that I had PTSD and I have a service dog with me. So that was amazing. Yes.
Really?
And so, but my worry quotient, I guess I would call it, I don't know what you call it in the book. You're now going to tell us about it. But now it's 5. And it made me think about a couple of things we were talking about how everything to do with your life folds into who you are as a human being, and about how one change of having a job that I love now and I'm passionate about, and a manager who I feel really supports me, and team members who are excited for me, that calmness in my brain and ability to not worry so much was so significant. I mean, from 8 to 5, I mean, I fell into that lower category. I was pretty happy, yes, score. But anyways, I was super excited to see that and to think about that little dynamic. And now I want you to kick off and start telling us a little bit about the methodology you utilize to walk people through finding the ways to worry less. Oh, and before you start, you know what's so funny? On LinkedIn, another organization posted this quote. And so while I was waiting for us to figure out our technology challenges, I posted it as a teaser to this interview on LinkedIn. And the quote that just popped up by Chasing Kindness said, "Stop using your energy to worry. Use your energy to believe, create, love, grow, glow, manifest, and heal." And I was like, yes. And I'm going to talk to Gigi about how she can help people stop worrying so they can do all of those things. So now I'm going to shut up. Please tell me more.
Well, in your case, it's interesting because you have this background and this commitment to growth. And there you were in a dead-end situation. And yet you didn't let it, even though it might have felt that you were on the edge of cracking, you didn't. You had the honesty to face it yourself and say, I'm not happy here. The honesty to say, well, how do I know there's not a job for me? I guess I could get past that whispered lie, there's no other job for me. This is the only one. I'm stuck. So I talk a lot about honesty and getting ourselves out of denial and, being able to tell other people and talk to other people about what's going on, not just in a bitch session, but someone who's a little farther down the road in their growth journey, so that they're not just what are we stamping our bullshit,
All the time to people, I'm like, okay, no. I love when you talk about the growing partners that you have, and we're not necessarily talking about your significant other. It's someone else that you can say something to who is going to give you facts back. And I say to these people, look, if I wanted you to tell me everything I'm doing is right and everything I think is right, I would just talk to myself. I wouldn't
Yeah.
ask for that but I don't. I want you to tell me the truth.
Yeah. And it's really, when we blame other people in other situations, we're being dishonest with ourselves. I have the responsibility, and I know this now because I've had therapy and I'm in recovery. So if a person's feeling like they're digging their hole deeper and deeper and deeper, and they have a sense something in there is wrong, I would really encourage you to go, and talk to a therapist or a counselor. Really allow yourself to take responsibility for your own happiness by getting help somewhere. So that's that honesty piece. We have to kind of get real with what's going on with us, And in your case, you also probably, this is my second strategy besides getting honest, is you had an internal sense of power, of empowerment. You've been through some hard stuff. You've grown through it. And some people have a higher power, a God, a religion, whatever helps. But it has to be a practical, in my case, it's a spirituality that tells me that the essence of me is not just all my fears and my screw ups. The essence of me in here is something really good. In fact, my second book just came out in February, and it's called Love More Now. And that's about opening that heart and living from the heart. So it doesn't have to be a religious thing, but it's something bigger than my fear. Okay. So that's the power part. So there's honesty, power, and then there's using tools there's choosing, really. You said, I want a new job that's not so stressful for me. That was a choice you sent out into the universe. I don't know what's going to happen, but I want this to happen. So I dug into the whole, law of attraction in the best sense of manifestation, and put all that stuff in. Here's how you write an affirmation. Here's the vision board I use to write my book. Because one thing I really like is I like people giving me specific instructions for how to use a particular tool. So if someone says, oh yeah, meditation works, or oh yeah, visualization's great, well, I want to know how to do it. So I put the little instructions in for all those things. Are you thinking about something, or as
I'm
I've
trying
talked
to remember.
about this?
There was a quote you were reminding me, and I'm not great at remembering exactly where it was. You reminded me there's some quote in your book that said basically when you make the decision to do something, it's amazing how much things around you start to fall into place.
Yes, I think I put that at the beginning of a chapter, actually, but it says essentially that. And that's exactly right. When we quit bitching and moaning and we start moving and visualizing and talking to healthy people. Yeah, I'm not finding the quote either, but and then the third step is choice, but then we have to do things to change our thinking, because most of us have this old, I used a lot of the brain science. We have these neural pathways grooved in of negativity. I mean, one of mine was, I'm not worthy of love. So every time I got into a relationship, of course, there was the manic high of the romance. And then when that faded, I couldn't be real with the person because I couldn't even be real with me. So I never told them what I felt or what I wanted because I didn't know. I was pretending to be what they wanted so that the love would last. And so I had to get honest with myself and honest with them. And I had to change that whispered lie. And, people in recovery from alcoholism addiction, they often say the whispered lies are like this committee in my head. It's like, and those can be changed. There's a lot of brain science in there that says, that's why gratitude lists work. Because when you make a gratitude list and you have to add to it tonight, and it can't be something that's already on there, you're going to be looking for things that are good. Changing the wiring. And
we've talked so much about gratitude lists on this podcast. And actually, one of my dear friends who listens to this podcast is going to call me out and say you're behind on your gratitude list. But I started several years ago gratitude list through an app. And for one point in the beginning, I was sending it out to people and people were sending theirs back. So half the beauty was reading other people's gratitude lists because it reminded me of things I'm also grateful for, because I would read that Linda is grateful for, the rain on the roof. And so it would remind me, okay, well, I'm not grateful for that, but I'm grateful for when it doesn't rain on the roof, right? Or something like that. And so slowly over time, I just couldn't keep up with sending it out, but I did keep sending it out to her. Now, she is currently the leader of this board because she's way on top of it right now and I'm slacking. But what we did start this year was a gratitude jar. And I did this with her and 2 other of my friends. And what we're doing is we're putting, so you see the stack of brown pieces in there. We're putting just one thing a day that we're grateful for in our gratitude jar. And at the end of the year, we're going to hang out for a party and we're going to read through them together, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And the third thing that I did for gratitude is I switched my signature line when I say, like, at the end of an email, I changed it to with gratitude. And that I'm not doing that for somebody else. I'm doing that because as I type, and it's not saved that way, I type it every time. As I type that now, it reminds me to be grateful for the job, to be grateful for the customer, to be grateful for the opportunity. And so it's this little, and it's been the coolest shift in my mindset of just that little thing. But I found your quote in your book. Can I read it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's on page 33 and 34, and it says, when you honestly admit your personal will can't fulfill your desires, a wondrous alternative appears. I call it positive power. This power helps you find peace and courage no matter what's going on in your life. And it works. Let's see. I thought that was the part that said, believers are happier than those who don't. Tap into something greater. Oh my gosh, seriously? Okay, I'm going to read it from my notes because maybe I wrote the wrong page number on here. Although that was really good, regardless. But the thing in the notes says when you honestly. Oh my gosh, this is hysterical. I literally have just read it and just lost it again. Okay. So you define this. This is cracking me up. This has never happened. So this is the first. I'm just going to laugh about it because it makes me laugh. But you said whispered lies. You've kind of said a little bit. In the book on page 2, you define it as negative mental or emotional messages that cause distress.
Right.
But I love that idea about whispered lies.
Yeah. I thought of naming the book Whispered Lies. But then I thought someone would think it was one of those bodice ripper Harlequin, and I thought I can't do that,
Maybe you just republish the same book and with the cover say, so you just hit a whole new audience group.
That's
right. I don't know. I'll talk to your marketing people about that.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're talking about whispered lies, and I just, my early therapy, I mean, even in the 80s, there was this book out called Feeling Good. And it was the early, changing your thinking behavioral therapy. And that's what I realized right away. My God, my thinking is killing me. And when I quit drinking and using and sexing to numb myself from feeling, then I had a greater awareness of how horrible I felt about myself. And so I, really had to think about what can I do to rewire. And I got a self-hypnosis tape because back in the 80s, when I realized how much I didn't love myself, they didn't have these wonderful things like Insight Timer and so on. I love Insight Timer. I think guided meditations are a
Can you
fabulous
describe?
way
Yeah,
to
describe what that
reprogram.
is for listeners who
Sure.
don't know what Insight Timer is.
Yeah, it's Insight Timer. And it's kind of a weird name, but it started out as just a timer for people to time when they were meditating. But now all these people have put in guided meditations, and you can search for free guided meditations to help you sleep, to deal with stress. There's ones on self-compassion, which I think are really important when we're struggling, with Kristen Neff. That's, I put a lot of people's names in my book of people, some of my favorite people who have wonderful, she has free stuff on her website and so on. She's Kristen Neff. Anyway, so yeah, we can reprogram those thoughts by, the affirmations and the self-talk, but there's also spiritual and connecting with beauty and like ways of bringing pleasure and okayness to ourselves by noticing beautiful things. That's, I think, the gratitude really helps with that.
Yes.
I had my car worked on today, and I was walking around and God, look how gorgeous the sky is. And, it was my natural state. Now, this is after 30 some years of a lot of work and therapy.
You also call it in the book Appreciating Beauty. Yeah. And I loved that too, because I think it's almost like two sides of a coin, like being grateful for it, but also being able to say, this is beautiful, the sun is beautiful, or this flower is beautiful, or this person is beautiful, or this, appreciating those things of beauty.
And that's kind of if we think of course, there's 50 tools in the book. And some of them are, of this cognitive type of reframing and so on. And some of them are this quasi-spiritual, like gratitude. It's mental, but it's also connects your heart. Spiritual, some of the Buddhist practices, Christian practices, whatever. I study what's called A Course in Miracles, and it tells me that, now who knows what's true, right? But it tells me that I was created my essence, the spirit of me was created beautiful and perfect, not in my human body, but in my spirit. So that's like what I can take to the bank, that's that power that I can rely on. And I know when people first enter either therapy or recovery of some sort and go for help, they might feel like I did, that there's this deep pit down inside that's full of bad, ugly stuff. And if I rip the Band-Aid off, it's going to come gushing out and it'll overwhelm me, and they'll send me to the insane asylum.
And heaven forbid if anyone sees it too, right? It's got to stay down there.
I really believed it. And what I'm so glad to report is that when you're on a growth path with people who are wise, they're not going to have you picking at the scab and saying, my old perfectionistic, I got to get it done way with my intellect did not work with these kinds of, it worked to help me find tools, but many of the tools are not just intellectual. They have to do with the heart. They have to do with changing our feelings. They're pretty subtle in that way. And then the other kind of tools that really helped me were energy tools, energy healing. And, people back in the days when I was entered into, Reiki is the one that's most well known. Now I think meditation is also an energy healer and a cognitive changer and a spiritual connecting with your true self. That's like the all-purpose healing tool. And let me say a bit about meditation for a minute. Most people say, I can't meditate, my mind is too active. Especially people kind of, you and I are probably alike. We're doers and we like to get things done and we have active minds and, so they say, I can't meditate. But if the key to happiness is taking responsibility for my thinking and the content of my thoughts, then when I meditate and I'm supposed to be focusing on my breathing or a candle or a scene or a mantra, and my mind wanders, what a great opportunity to notice how it wanders and to practice noticing what I'm thinking and switching it back to the focus. That is my everyday practice, really. I start saying something negative myself and I kind of notice it. And then I say, oh, wait a minute. I'm scaring myself about that. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, and sometimes where the energy, I'll go tapping the EFT things, or I'll use, a variety of tools to get myself settled down.
Several of the things that I love about this is, one, we at RAN are so passionate about educating individuals about the reality that there are a lot of different modalities, tools, methods towards living your best life. And even as we were talking about, the mission of this podcast is education and reduction of the stigma. Mission of RAN and our nonprofit is to help those individuals who are in treatment, their insurance suddenly drops them, and try and help fund for a transition plan or additional days or an aftercare program or something like that. And when we're looking at evaluating sites and companies to partner with, one of our key things is we want organizations that offer a variety of treatment modalities, options, tips, ways, methods, whatever you want to call it, so that individuals can try different ones and then figure out what works for them. Because listeners, don't stress out. Gigi says there are 50 ways in here. You do not have to use all 50 ways to worry less now. I mean, we've talked about an example that I certainly have not used all 50 of these ways since December, but I'm already worrying less now from a couple of different changes in my life, right? So I love that you call that out. I was trying to pull up. I don't love the Audible app. I'm just going to throw that out into the universe, because every time I try and pull up a book that I just finished, even when I go to the finished part, the name is not popping up there. But I just finished a book talking about the author was talking about his life journey through learning how to meditate and utilizing meditation in those areas of the brain. And his focus on his work was helping individuals who were smokers. And he talked about how he had so many people that they had cut their addictions to meth, to alcohol, to all these other things, but they just could not cut their addiction to smoking. And so they did these randomized trials, including, your standard treatment for non-smoking, and then the ones including meditation. And he was like, at first, and I believe several of these were at Johns Hopkins. So he said at first he just wanted to see that it didn't make it worse, right? And sure enough, the blind data came in and it showed that becoming mindful, thinking about, what does this taste like? What does this smell like when I'm smoking, when I'm doing it, being present in the moment? What are the triggers that are leading me to do this? Be mindful about some of those things. And then using meditation helped those individuals. So the numbers were like significantly better for the groups that utilize these other tools and tips, which is why I get so excited when people come out with a list of things. So as someone who wants to worry less, you can literally pick up this book and flip through. Now, I will say that just trying one of these once and then waking up the next day and say I'm still worrying, that's not what I mean. You actually should commit to a method to try for a set period of time and give it a go for real. But I love the diversity of this, because it really means that people from all walks of life, all age groups, all ability levels can figure out levels to success for themselves.
Mm-hmm. I love that you mentioned research, because When on one of the early drafts, someone said, well, how can you recommend these things to people? Where's the research to support, so I put a little, just a little blurb about what the resource was, what the research was, why it's, good for people. And one of them that's in there is the same mindfulness, but the original research starting in the 90s by John Kabat-Zinn and his partners at University of Massachusetts. And they were treating people in the hospital, and they got the end stage pain patients that nothing else could help them. And they created this, and it's now a national course. You can do it online. I've done it person to person. It was 8 weeks, 3 hours every night. It's called mindfulness-based stress reduction. Their research is gangbusters for helping PTSD, chronic pain, all kinds of things. And I did it, the course. My mom had just died. I had a book that was due. It was just a bunch of stuff all together. And I thought, and I run tight anyway, so I took the course. It was really worth it. Yeah. And it's not just about meditation. It's about being in the present moment. I mean, that is the thing about worrying. It's wrecking, living in the wreckage of our future, waste of time, regretting the past, waste of time, right now. And then we think, well, but if I don't think about the future, then how am I going to control it? Well, by this age, we all begin to see, there is no controlling everything when it comes to family members, lovers, friends. That's a whole different arena than the one that we're used to, that 2 + 2 = 4. If I do this in school, I'll get the grade. It's
life does not work that way. No, it does not.
No. I think the best use of my intellect is to find tools that help me do an end run around my intellect to my heart, where the true wisdom lies. That's why I got 50 tools.
Yeah, I love that. I've said this a lot to individuals that I'm mentoring and team members on my team at the company, is that so many of the things when I was younger that I stressed so much about, guess what? They were never, ever, ever as bad as what the story I had made up in my head. I mean, I should start writing fiction books, right? Because I can make up some really elaborate stories in my head. And reality was never that exotic or insane or cryptic or anything. It just wasn't, right? And
Right.
so I have been blessed. I will say one of the things that has been a blessing coming out of the kidnapping is because I did spend so much time in treatment and resources and working on myself afterwards, is that there are still a lot of things that I stress about and worry about. And I'm still very much a work in progress, overachiever, workaholic, all this kind of thing. So I'm not going to lie as I'm being recorded, but I will say, or I'm not going to use the word but, I'm going to say, and
Yeah.
I have grown so much in areas where there are some things, for example, at work that I want to do one way, and maybe my boss thinks I should do it another way, but I happen to have more experience in this one way, and I just know it's going to work. And so I've just decided, I told him, I was transparent. I said, I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of just letting your words kind of roll off of me, and I'm going full steam ahead in this way because I've seen success in this area and I know it's going to work this way. And he was very receptive to that, and I love him for that. So I think that realizing that over time has been one of the greatest things for me to let go. I will say I've also kind of procrastinating more now in my older age. I never used to procrastinate. So maybe it's not all good, but
Yeah.
hey.
Oh, it's wonderful to keep growing, but I know somewhere, I think for a lot of people, maybe it's younger now because of so much better education and things like you're doing, but somewhere, that belief that if I do A and B and I get married and have the picket fence and the 2 children and blah, 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 I'll be happy. all these little formulas we learned, which are whispered lies. Why can't I make that happen? If I can't, I won't be happy. Fall apart. They fall apart. And then what? There's no formula. We're going to have to get in touch with some inner resource, some power, some wisdom, and some buddies, growth buddies, who are also interested in overcoming their self-limiting beliefs. That's what hangs us up.
So I love that you included Corey's quote in your book. So as this is on page 31, listeners, when you buy your book and you're reading it and you're opening it up, so on 31, as Corey ten Boom, savior of many Jews during World War II, wrote, "Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength." And that is 1,000% true. So thinking about the word strength, and you were just talking about growth buddies, describe to our audience, how do you find, like, what are the key, and you talk about it in here, what are some of the key characteristics you should look for to add that strength in your circle of good, solid growth buddies?
Yeah. I mean, there are people who are not chasing after you. It's an attraction. You're coming there because you want to heal. It's not like they're going to try to get you to pay money or a lot of money unless you ask to. They have guidelines for confidentiality. They do share honestly. Over time, you develop the trust and you can become more vulnerable. And they meet regularly.
What do you consider to be regularly?
Once every week or two. For people who don't have a group, I mean, I suggest, if you go to a yoga class, you're going to meet some people interested in personal growth. If you hang out, if you look at that meetup and you find a group that's interested in Eckhart Tolle's books, or any of these writers about positive thinking and living and spiritual life, if that appeals to you, you can find people to hang out with. But it's really helpful to just pick a book and get a couple of people in a little readers book group. I'm in one that meets every 2 weeks, and it's about emotional sobriety. We all have, most of us have, there's like 9 of us, we have many years of sobriety, but there's the emotional sobriety of learning to stand in our own power, dealing with relationships. I also go to Al-Anon, which is the 12-step group for people who've been affected by alcohol. And that's very helpful for everyday relationships and conflicts and stuff like that. Celebrate recovery. If you're into a church, quite often you can find a church that has Celebrate Recovery, and it's a 12-step program in a Christian setting. And they have Buddhist 12-step programs. There's just so many options. You don't have to, I think you just pick one to start with, that appeals to you. Listening to podcasts about growth-oriented podcasts, listening to people, picking a book and playing with it, couldn't hurt. Just don't stay stuck in the same old place you've been. If you're miserable, do something different.
So you included one of Deepak Chopra's quotes in your book on page 38, and where he talks about many of the world's wisdom traditions, which is a term used by author and spiritual leader Deepak Chopra, teach this single lesson. So it's not a quote of him, but it's the lesson he teaches. Our most important choice is to align our thoughts and actions with love rather than fear. So Gigi, can you talk a little bit about fear in 2 different ways? So I've heard some individuals can be very fearful of growth. They can be very fearful of, and you just mentioned quite a few 12-step programs, and the podcast and your book cover individuals that are struggling for things in all types of area, depression, anxiety, PTSD, just being a mom, raising young children, a dad, raising young children, any of the things in life. Actually, anyone who's a human has fear and has a need and has worry and has a need for this. So can you talk a little bit about the fear of growth and how fear also kind of stifles us and feeds into that worry connection?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you've been rewarded for being high achieving, there's a little underlying whispered lie. If I don't perform well, no one's going to love me. No wonder I have so many degrees. I was only one of the kids that did well at school in my family. So that was how I, felt good about myself. So we have these, there's obviously healthy fear of dangerous situations and so on. But we have to remember that we originally were animals. We have this primitive brain. And what happens is when the brain starts considering that things are going to shift, it perceives threat, even when the shift is mental. It's interesting, the studies they're doing on how the primitive brain kind of, the fight, flight, stop. So if someone's going to change who I am and take away my perfectionism, I'll never achieve again. A lot of people who are artists and get sober, they're afraid they'll never create any art or music again. So, I'll be the hole in the donut because you're going to take my survival strategies away from me. But when the survival strategies were developed to protect us from perceived threats, like in my home, it was like, oh boy, don't open up to anybody, make sure you hide. And then you go into a relationship and you're still doing the hiding thing because you're afraid of exposing yourself because it might be like your family, then you're in a trouble, right? So I would go through relationship after relationship, repeating the pattern. So these fear of growth can be, I'm going to lose the best part of me that everybody's been rewarding me for. And it feels like if I let go of this, I won't be anybody, But if you look at the cost of those beliefs, I'm not lovable. I have to be the life of the party or no one will like me. That's a pretty heavy thing to bear, than putting all of my approval out externally rather than saying, I am a human being who has a beautiful spirit. I've been covering it up with a lot of shit. I'm getting help. I'm starting to allow myself to trust that there is a goodness in me that can overcome the fear, overcome the old patterns. It's going to be gradual, and thank God it's gradual, because we wouldn't want the sun to just shine all of a sudden on all those things, And fear, I have soft spots. I caught, like when someone becomes very dogmatic. My mother was very into politics and would read the congressional record and be on the phone,
Wow.
very, very angry about this and that. And it was all political. And then when she drank, it was even worse. So when I hear people saying, and it's gotta be what's, I just kind of regress, right? Even though I've worked on it so much. So what I do is I said, it's not like I'm never going to get worried again or scared. It's just like, oh yeah, that's a little bit of a soft spot. I really hate it when people are dogmatic and think they're 100% right. I'm just going to sit here and keep my mouth shut, So a lot of it is learning to comfort ourselves, to soothe ourselves when we're fearful. And every single one of those tools, I believe, is streaming into me something bigger than the fear. And that's one way to think about it, is the love. And I'll just pitch my second book.
Do it. I love this.
Which just came out last February. This is not a bunch of tools. It's more stories, but it's about facing life challenges and not with still having an open heart without becoming bitter because I'm getting old, or I've had an illness, or my child is an addict, or I'm an addict, or I grew up in a dysfunctional home, or I'm a highly sensitive person and things really bother me and nobody understands me. It's it's all about and then there is a tool in there, kind of an inventory tool of how to get honest with ourselves. And there are 6 patterns that I had to put in a book that are self-defeating patterns based on whispered lies. And they are the caretaker. If you grew up being the oldest and caring for, then you go into relationships and you start trying to manipulate your partner and your children, you're screwed. Need help with that.
It will not work well.
Yeah. The martyr, I just won't say anything. I just never stand up for myself. The perfectionist, it has to be my way. It has to be perfect. Like, it was so cute the way you handled not being able to find the quote. You didn't get embarrassed or down on yourself because you've worked on yourself. And you have that little part that probably hates to make mistakes, but you've learned to say, yeah, it's okay. The people pleaser. This is one of my favorites that I had. Pretend to be who people want me to be. That is such a soul killer, a spirit killer. We got to learn to love who we are.
I did that when I was younger. And I think a lot of people that come from abusive families do that, because then it's this reaction. You learn if you make them happy, then it will cause you less pain. And at some stage in my life, it's probably in my late 20s, early 30s, somewhere around there, I suddenly realized, whoa, wait, I don't even want to be like these people I'm constantly trying to please, who have made it clear I'm never going to make them happy. Why am and so now I have, my own hashtag, be brave, be badass. People who know me know I'm going to say what I'm thinking. Sometimes that's a good thing. And sometimes I should really work on the things that I say a little better, maybe. But it was that mindset shift where I suddenly realized, wait, I'm trying to please these people that I don't even want to be like. So I'm going to stop trying to please them and focus more on taking care of myself and the person I want to be like.
Exactly. And it's just a beautiful way to explain it. And the last one is the workaholic. Oh no, there's 2 more. The workaholic.
I can qualify as a workaholic.
Guilty. The work becomes, the whispered lie is, if I don't perform at a high level, if I don't put everything I have into it, I'm going to lose face. I'm going to let myself down. And it's a slippery slope, because high achieving is valuable to the world. We just don't want to tear ourselves up in the process or hurt our loved ones in the process. So finding that balance. And the last one is the tap dancer, which I didn't get at first. Yeah. These are all in this new book, but
in the new book, Love More Now.
Yeah. It's the tap dancer is the one who will get into something a little bit and then get out. So I'm going to try meditation for 2 days and then I get out, and I'll try this and I get out, and not commit to recovery, not commit, whenever it gets hard, I leave. So I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It took me 6 months to get a sponsor in AA because I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I went to the meetings, but I left early, and finally, when I heard all those women talk about their sponsors and how wonderful they were and helped them, I thought, I want one of those. I wanted a sponsor.
The whole commit thing is important. And being a sponsee in another program and being a mentor to people, I know, I have learned how to say no to people very well, because no is a complete sentence. And listeners have heard me say this. No is an absolute complete sentence. And I've also learned how to tell mentees, like, look, here's the deal. You're going to have to work if you want to be mentored by me. I have a 5 resume bullet point program that I just kicked off yesterday at my new company. And and what I do is that for the individuals who will work for it, then I help them figure out 5 resume bullet points. And it could be work related to their career. It could also be just an area of their personal life that's completely outside of what our current company is. And we pick those 5 things. We then map out ways to accomplish them. And then the minute they accomplish one of them, they go on their LinkedIn, they go on their resume, and they update it. People think you can't update your LinkedIn resume unless you're looking for a new job. Okay, that's insane. That just get that idea out of your head. So then they go and update it, and they add one more thing. And now so you always have these 5 things you're working on. Well, one of the things I was talking with someone about it, and I said, I'm opening it up to the whole company. So anyone in the company that wants to participate will reach out to me, but it will be very clear. I'm not doing this for them. I'm going to be their guide and their collaborator and mentor in it. But there will be the majority of the work will be on their end. So if they start tap dancing, for that example or whatnot, guess what? I'm out because I'm super busy.
Yeah.
So I'm here to help you if you want to live your best life. I am right there next to you, and I will figure out ways to collaborate with you. But if you're not, then I'm not your gal.
Exactly. It takes a commitment. And, starting in therapy or starting, just one person, it's enough for a start because it's scary, as you mentioned. And, but it is so worth it to claim your own self.
So
listen to you with your big girl panties. To grow into the best self is such a joy. And then to help other people find their best selves and let go of the self-defeating patterns over time. It's not immediate, but it happens.
Nope.
It happens. If, that footwork in my book, those 4 things, they have fixed everything. I have to get honest. I have to claim some power outside of my own intellect. I need to make choices about how I want my life to be, and I need to do the work. I need to, get going on some kind of footwork.
Well, I love in the forward of the book where you talk about the 4 strategies and the 50 tools, and you say about them that they help you gain peace. So to manage your life challenges with wisdom, hope, and gratitude, no matter what's going on. Clarity, discover your true self to fulfill your greatest dreams without limitations. And connection, create relationships that blossom and thrive while serving others in loving ways. So that was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And that became the title, Peace, Clarity, and Connection. I put those in. I think the clarity one is really connecting with your true self, and relationships and personal challenges. That's this. I'm going to send you a copy, so I'll email you and ask you for your address. But I'm selling it on eBay. on Amazon for $9.99 because
I will include the link in the show notes as well.
It's not expensive. But what I want to offer is this book. I have a bunch of extras because the printer in 2018. Yeah, 2018. They made a printing error.
Oh.
And so they printed a whole extra run for me.
And
so they're not the print versions on Amazon, but not as a brand new book. They're used ones or whatever. So these I'm sending out for $6. I pay the the mailing, and I personally autograph it. Anyway, because I have so many of these, if one of your listeners buys this one and sends me the email saying I bought it, I'll send you a free one of these.
Awesome.
Okay.
We will include that for sure.
Yeah. And so if you want this for $6, and all shipping included and a little personal signed thing, I'll do that too. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Gigi, was there anything you really hoped we would cover today that we haven't covered?
Don't let yourself believe that there is not a better life for you, that you're stuck. Don't let yourself believe that. There inside of you is a strength and a courage and a wisdom that maybe you haven't learned to lean on and draw from, but you can. We all can.
That's so beautiful. Okay, the final thing, and I just got teary-eyed hearing that. So this is my eyes tearing up. That's so amazing. Okay, a final requirement of this podcast is to share your favorite motivational quote. So what is your favorite motivational quote, Gigi?
Well, it has to do, motivational.
Or even the quote that you say to yourselves over and over.
I would say all is well. Even externally, if it doesn't look like it, in here, in the thing that goes on and on, all is well.
That's beautiful. Well, we will include some snippets and teasers and include the stuff about the books as well, because I love the idea of individuals being able to worry less and love more. That is amazing. And this has been a great interview. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I loved every minute.
Thank you for joining us today with your coffee and conversation. We hope you've been encouraged and learned something from today's story. To learn more about today's guest, please check out our show notes for more details. Now it's time to remember to like this episode, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. Recovery Advocate Network envisions a world where individuals with mental health challenges receive comprehensive and effective treatment without the worry of financial burdens to themselves or their families, all without the stigmas often present in society. We are proud that every individual working with RAN does so on a 100% volunteer basis. You can support the mission by making a financial donation via PayPal or Venmo, or email donate@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org if you would like to donate items for our next fundraising auction. Please visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org to learn more. Now, stay in the loop about upcoming events, future episodes, and more by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and all major podcast platforms. As a reminder, the experiences and advice expressed in this episode are the host and guest's own personal stories and do not represent the opinions of any organization mentioned. RAN is passionate about opening the doors for all voices and experiences, not just those expressed in any particular podcast. If you want to share your experiences or expertise, we encourage you to be a future guest by emailing us at podcast@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org or submit a blog by emailing blog@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org. We also encourage you to comment on the episode so that we can continue to provide content that is most beneficial to the community. How do you do that? Visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org, and in the top right corner, click that comment button and comment. So listeners, what do you need to do? Pause what you're doing, subscribe, follow us. Please give us a like and a 5-star rating, write some meaningful comments, and most importantly, share these episodes with your friends. You never know whose heart you will touch, so please be a part of a reason someone has new hope today. If this episode was triggering to you, we encourage you to contact your support system, therapist, national and community support groups, the Global Crisis Text Line by texting 741-741, and/or if in the U.S., dialing 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're in the U.S. and need additional resources such as shelter, support group resources, transportation, food, and/or a safe, confidential path out of physical or emotional domestic abuse, please call 211 or visit www.211info.org for assistance. Now, we know you are very busy, and we are grateful that you said yes to sharing time with us today. If you stuck to our 3 C's of engagement and listened to the full episode, then visit the podcast section of our website and leave the comment about the podcast, and you'll be entered to win an autographed copy of one of the books from one of our book club series, as well as a Coffee and Conversation coffee mug. So thanks again. Until next time, back to your coffee.